Welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation of the Christian journey. My name is John Sullivan, and in these presentations we are trying to reach two very distinct audiences. The first audience is the secular audience, those who don't consider themselves Christians, in fact may even cringe at the term, but look around the world and recognize they want to learn something about this Christianity thing because it never seems to go away. If anything, it's becoming more aggressive. We see it raising its voice in politics, we see it raising it in social policy, and if we're going to engage it, we need to understand something about it. And that in itself becomes a bit problematic, with so many faces, with so many cultures, with so many different opinions within Christianity itself about what it is. How do we find out just what it is? What is Christianity? And I know I found in my own experience, it was very difficult to find that answer. As a youth, I left my majors as a physics major and as a music major. I took my degree in theology, trying to understand this, trying to find out what Christianity was. And I found that it was really hard to get a straight answer. I could find plenty of people who would tell me what to think, what to believe, what to do, what to wear, what music to listen to, what music not to listen to, especially where to send my money. But I could find pitifully few who would give me a straight answer about what Christianity is. And so I actually have a great deal of sympathy for the secular audience, which is a little fed up with Christianity. I mean, I myself grow weary when I hear people lambast the current generation, thinking it's going to hell in a handbasket, that things are so much worse than when we were growing up, and how back then was so good and today is so bad, and we have this loss of Christian values. And I think, if I think from a secular perspective, and I put my honesty eyeglasses on, was back then really so good? If back then was so good, why did back then give us 2 world wars? And before then, the French-German War, the Wars of Italian Unification, and the Napoleonic Wars, and the 30 Years' War, and the 100 Years' War, and on and on and on. It gave us witch hunts. It gave us some barbaric torture and cruelty. It gave us ignorance. Even in this last century, if back then was so good, why did we have the Roaring Twenties? And why did we have bootlegging and out-of-control organized crime? In my teens and 20s and into my 30s, I worked with American men of the great generation. And many of them were really good men, admirable men, heroes. But many of them were just as lustful and depraved as the men I know today. And the good family men from back then were just as good as the good family men I know today. So I can understand when people get a little impatient with those who just talk about how much better things were back then than they are today. In fact, if we look at the secularization of our world from a secular perspective, there have actually been a lot of improvements. If we think of what has happened and we take a long-term view of our world, we have dramatic increases in health care. We have much lower infant mortality. We have the spread of information. We don't have the eradication, but certainly a lessening of racism and bigotry in the world. We have the beginnings of international law. We have a much better understanding and ability to treat and deal with mental illness, the growth of emotional maturity. We have advances in information and communication. We see the advent of enlightened self-interest. We see win-win negotiation styles instead of win-lose negotiation styles in business and in politics. And if we look at the long-term trend, things seem to be getting better. And when we look around at the people that we know, most of the people I know, including the non-Christians that I know, are good people. They're not evil people. And so if we look at our world and we see that in general it appears to be improving, and most of the people that we know are fine and good people, then why do we need Christianity? Is it relevant any longer? Or do we just need to finally get over it and get on with history? And the question is just as pertinent for our other target audience, the Christian audience. Because frankly, if our model of Christianity can't answer those questions, if it can't establish its relevance and become meaningful, then it's a very hollow and a very empty Christianity. We're sticking our heads in the sand, and we might as well get on with our lives. So the questions are quite important. Now, my world is a world of business and technology. And there's a lot I don't like about my world, but one thing I do very much appreciate about my world is its eminent practicality. It just doesn't have a lot of patience and time and money for fluff. If it works, it's in. If it doesn't work, it's out. So what if we were to evaluate Christianity by the same business criteria? What if we looked at Christianity as a business proposal for the human business? And we had the exact same expectations. If you're going to make a business proposal to me, I want to know clearly what it is. What do you see in my business that needs to be changed? Where do you want to take me? What's so bad about where I am? What's so good about where you want to go? And how do I get there? What's the plan? What's the process? How do I measure it? We should expect the same things out of Christianity. So let's take a look at Christianity now. Let's look at it as if it was the Christian business proposal for the human business. And immediately we hit a bit of a problem that I find, at least from my perspective and from my culture and the way I think, that most of the business pitches we usually get about Christianity don't work. If you want to come along and beat me over the head and say, John, you're a no-good, lousy sinner, you need to repent, I think, I do? What's wrong with me? I'm not a mass murderer. I'm not even a single murderer. I mean, I don't steal cars. I don't burn down houses. I'm faithful to my wife. I love my kids. I pay my taxes, maybe a little bit begrudgingly. But I don't see myself as a grotesquely evil person. And when I look around me at my friends and my neighbors and the people I don't know a lot of axe murderers. I mean, most of the people I know are good people. You know, they don't steal cars, and they don't kill people, and they love their wives and kids, and they pay their taxes begrudgingly. You know, so if I see myself as a good person, and I see most of the people that I know as good people, and you tell me that Christianity is important because I'm a sinner and I need to repent, I mean, it just go away. It just isn't relevant to me. You know, and other people take a much more positive approach. And they'll come up to me and say, brother, are you saved? And I'll think, saved from what? You know, it's the same problem. What's wrong with me that I need to be saved? What are you trying to save me to? And why is that better than what I have? You know, it's the same issue of relevance. And if you come up to me and say, brother, are you saved? And you can't tell me about it, well, you know, frankly, all it makes you want to do is walk fast and avoid eye contact. It's become an annoying intrusion into my life that I want to push aside. You know, so the pitch isn't working. You know, some may come to me and say of Christianity that we become more Christ-like. And again, I have to ask, now that's a little more substantive. That actually has some guts to it. But if you can't explain it, and if all that means to me is that I'm supposed to be a kind and a good person, well, most of the time I try to be a kind and a good person. And most of the people I know try to be a kind and a good person. Many of them would give me the shirt off their back. So if I'm already a kind and a good person, why do I need your Christ? I don't, do I? So we have some real problems with the business pitches. It's not to demean the enthusiasm and the zeal of the people who make them. It's just, in my culture, it doesn't work. So let's set this pitch problem aside. And let's come back to the business plan of Christianity and find out, all right, aside from the pitch, what is it saying? Maybe it's a bad pitch, but maybe it's a good plan. So let's begin looking at this Christian business plan. Now, when I evaluate a business plan,